A plane that landed empty. Tonight's story begins with something that should never happen. A passenger plane descends from the sky, touches down safely, and rolls to a complete stop. The engines fall silent. The runway lights continue to glow. But when the doors are opened, there is no one inside. No passengers. No crew. No explanation. This is the story of a flight that arrived, without the people who were supposed to be on it. Settle in, relax, and let this quiet mystery unfold. The airport that should not have existed. Airports are designed for movement. People arriving. People leaving. Engines roaring. Radios speaking constantly. Airports are not designed for silence. And yet, one morning, an aircraft touched down on a runway with no communication, no response, and no people inside. The landing gear lowered smoothly. The wheels met the ground cleanly. The plane rolled forward under control. But when authorities reached the cockpit, it was empty. No pilot. No crew. No passengers. Tonight, we explore one of aviation's most unsettling mysteries. Not a crash. Not a disappearance mid-air. But a plane that landed, already abandoned. So slow your breathing. Lower the volume slightly. And let the story unfold at its own pace. A normal flight plan. The flight was routine. Short distance. Clear weather. No reported mechanical issues. Filed flight plan approved without delay. Departure logged. Destination confirmed. Nothing about the aircraft stood out. It was not experimental. Not classified. Not secret. Just another scheduled flight crossing open airspace. The pilot checked in on time. Radio communication was calm and professional. Controllers later described the voice as relaxed. Unhurried. Focused. No stress. No hesitation. Just a man doing his job. The last normal transmission. The final confirmed transmission was ordinary. Altitude confirmed. Heading steady. Weather unchanged. There was no hint that anything was wrong. No distress call. No hesitation in speech. No deviation from protocol. Then silence. Not static. Not interference. Silence. Controllers waited. Repeated the call. Nothing. At first, this wasn't alarming. Radio dropouts happen. Signal interference is common. But minutes passed. Then more. The aircraft continued moving on radar. Steady, level, controlled. It wasn't drifting. It wasn't descending. It was flying perfectly. When silence became unsettling. Air traffic controllers are trained to remain calm. They wait. They verify. They follow procedure. But silence paired with perfect flight behavior is rare. Controllers attempted multiple frequencies. Still nothing. The plane responded to none of them. Yet it remained aligned with its flight path. Speed unchanged. Altitude locked. Almost as if someone or something was still guiding it. The automation question. Modern aircraft rely heavily on automation. Autopilot systems can maintain altitude, follow headings, adjust speed. But autopilot cannot communicate, make complex decisions, land without configuration. Yet the aircraft began its descent. Gradual, controlled, exactly as scheduled. The landing sequence activated in the correct order. Flaps adjusted. Speed reduced. Still no voice. Still no response. The emergency response. Authorities prepared for the worst. Runways were cleared. Emergency vehicles positioned. Fire crews waited in silence. Everyone expected a crash. But it never came. The aircraft aligned with the runway. Touched down smoothly. Rolled forward. It did not veer. It did not stop suddenly. It behaved like a plane guided by human hands. The empty cockpit. When responders reached the aircraft, they moved carefully. Doors opened. No smoke. No alarms. Just quiet. Inside the cockpit. Seats upright. Controls untouched. Systems active. But no one was there. The pilot's seat was empty. The co-pilot's seat was empty. The cabin behind them. Also empty. No signs of struggle. No damage. No explanation. Where did everyone go? Investigators searched the aircraft thoroughly. Every compartment. Every panel. Every locked space. No bodies. No blood. No indication that anyone exited mid-air. Passenger manifest showed names. Crew list confirmed identities. But not a single person was physically present. It was as if the aircraft had flown itself, after being abandoned. Objects left behind. Personal items were found inside. A headset resting neatly near the controls. A coffee cup still warm. Flight charts unfolded. Nothing disturbed. Nothing rushed. No sign of panic. Which raised a terrifying question. If something went wrong, why did no one react? The locked door problem. Aircraft doors are not simple to open. At cruising altitude, opening a door is nearly impossible due to pressure. Even at lower altitudes, exiting safely would require coordination, equipment, time. No parachutes were missing. No emergency exits triggered. No alarms activated. Which means no one left the plane intentionally. Theories begin quietly. Early explanations focused on the obvious. Hypoxia. cabin pressure loss, sudden medical emergency. But none of these fully explained the facts. Hypoxia causes confusion, not total disappearance. Medical emergencies don't remove entire crews. And pressure loss triggers alarms. None were recorded. A disturbing possibility. Investigators considered something rare. Sudden incapacitation. A scenario where everyone loses consciousness at nearly the same time. But even then, bodies would remain. Seats would be occupied. This plane arrived completely empty. Why this case still matters? This was not a crash investigation. This was an absence investigation. An absence is harder to explain than destruction. No debris. No wreckage. No final moment. Just a machine doing its job. Without the people meant to control it. The black box that spoke too little. Every aircraft carries a memory. Two of them, in fact. The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. Together, they are meant to preserve the final moments of a flight. When investigators recovered the black boxes from the empty aircraft, expectations were high. Answers were supposed to be there. What they found instead was incomplete. The flight data recorder showed normal parameters. Altitude stable. Speed within limits. Course unchanged. No sharp movements. No sudden descents. No system failures. The aircraft behaved as if it were under constant supervision. But the cockpit voice recorder told a different story. For most of the flight, voices were present. Routine communication. Checklist confirmations. Quiet background sounds of a working cockpit. Then, gradually, the voices stopped. Not abruptly. Not in panic. They simply faded. A cockpit without emergency. There were no raised voices. No alarms captured on audio. No warning tones. No frantic movement. The last audible sound was subtle. A chair shifting slightly. A soft movement, almost like someone standing. Then nothing. Minutes of silence followed. Yet the aircraft continued flying. Which meant the systems were still engaged. Someone or something had configured the plane to continue. Automation can only go so far. Experts were quick to clarify one point. Autopilot cannot land a plane entirely on its own. At least, not without specific conditions. Modern systems can assist. They can guide. They can stabilize. But they still require human input to initiate certain steps. Landing gear deployment. Final descent alignment. Manual overrides. Someone had to be present at some point. But when? And where did they go? The missing moment. Investigators focused on a specific window of time. A narrow gap between the last recorded voice and the beginning of descent. It was only a few minutes long. But something happened there. Something significant enough to remove every person from the aircraft. Without triggering alarms. Without damaging the plane. Without leaving physical evidence. That moment remains unexplained. Cabin pressure and theories of sleep. One of the earliest theories involved cabin pressure. A slow decompression could cause drowsiness, confusion, loss of consciousness. But decompression does not erase bodies. Even if everyone lost consciousness, they would still be seated. Belts fastened. Bodies present. Yet the plane was empty. This theory quietly faded. Chemical or environmental exposure. Another possibility was contamination. A gas leak. Toxic fumes. An airborne substance. Such exposure could incapacitate a crew rapidly. But again, incapacitation does not explain disappearance. There were no residue traces. No chemical alerts. No damage to internal materials. And still, nothing explained where the people went. The passenger question. Passenger records confirmed multiple occupants. Families. Individuals. Verified tickets. Their luggage was found on board. Personal items remained in overhead compartments. Phones. Books. Clothing. No one took anything with them. Which meant whatever happened, it happened suddenly. And without preparation. No exit, no escape. Aircraft exits leave signs. Pressure alarms. Emergency slide deployment. Structural indicators. None were present. The plane's doors showed no signs of being opened mid-flight, which ruled out evacuation. There was no controlled escape. No descent by parachute. No intentional departure. The people did not leave the aircraft in any known way. Radar data and the perfect flight. Radar logs confirmed something unnerving. The aircraft flew too well. Minor adjustments. Smooth corrections. Consistent speed. It flew like a plane with an attentive pilot. Yet there was none. This detail disturbed investigators more than silence ever could. When investigators stopped speculating. At a certain point, official reports became cautious. Language changed. Words like unknown replaced probable. Entire paragraphs were removed from public versions. The case was not closed. It was archived. Left unresolved. Because no explanation fit all the evidence. The human response to absence. People expect mystery to involve danger, violence, fear, chaos. This case involved none of those. It involved nothingness. And nothingness is harder to process. Because there is no moment to point to. No error to correct. Just a quiet question. How does a plane lose everyone, and still land? Similar cases that never made headlines. Investigators quietly reviewed older aviation records. They found smaller incidents. Unexplained silence. Crew incapacitation. Unusual automation behavior. None as extreme. None as complete. But enough to suggest this wasn't entirely unique. Just unprecedented. Theories that remain unspoken. There are theories not included in official documents. Ideas discussed privately. Not because they are impossible, but because they cannot be proven. Sudden neurological events. Environmental anomalies. Psychological phenomena under rare conditions. None offer certainty. Only possibility. Why this story endures. This case refuses to settle. Because it challenges a basic assumption. That machines fail when humans disappear. But this machine did not fail. It completed its task. And in doing so, left behind a mystery far quieter and far more unsettling than a crash ever could. Experts who couldn't agree. When aviation experts were brought together to review the case, something unusual happened. They disagreed. Not slightly. Completely. Some insisted the answer had to be technical. Others believed it was medical. A few admitted privately that none of the known explanations worked. One senior investigator described the case as mechanically impossible, but physically real. The plane existed. The data existed. The landing happened. But the scenario should not have been possible. The autopilot myth. Public discussion often leaned heavily on autopilot. It felt comforting to believe the plane simply flew itself. But engineers were clear. Autopilot systems are limited. They don't improvise. They don't adapt. They don't compensate for unexpected variables. They follow instructions. Which means someone had to give those instructions. At least initially. And yet, when the aircraft touched down, there was no one left to receive it. The missing human footprint. Every human action leaves a trace. A fingerprint. A smudge. A disruption. Inside the cockpit, nothing appeared out of place. Seats were positioned normally. Controls showed no erratic use. Personal items rested exactly where they should. It was as if the people had quietly stood up and ceased to exist. Medical events that don't scale. Some medical experts proposed rare neurological events. Sudden loss of consciousness. Disorientation. Group incapacitation. But such events do not happen simultaneously to unrelated individuals. And even if they did, bodies remain. This case had no bodies. No physical conclusion. Just absence. The cabin cameras that saw nothing. The aircraft was equipped with internal monitoring systems. Not full surveillance, but enough to record movement and system interaction. Those logs showed nothing unusual. No rapid movement. No alarms. No emergency procedures. The plane did not experience chaos. It experienced nothing. A flight without emotion. What disturbed psychologists most was the lack of emotional signal. No panic. No urgency. No attempt to communicate distress. Whatever occurred did not trigger fear. That suggested something subtle. Something gradual. Something that removed awareness without causing alarm. The passage of time inside the aircraft. Time is a strange thing at altitude. With steady engine noise and stable lighting, hours can pass unnoticed. If something began slowly, a loss of clarity, a fading alertness, it might not have been noticed at all. Until it was too late. Why no one noticed from the ground? Another unsettling detail emerged. No nearby aircraft reported unusual behavior. No erratic movement. No distress signals detected externally. The plane appeared normal from the outside. Which meant whatever happened was contained. Silent. Invisible. The problem with unprecedented. Investigators dislike the word unprecedented. It means there is no framework. No checklist. No historical solution. This case fell outside every category. Not an accident. Not sabotage. Not mechanical failure. It existed in a space aviation was not prepared to explain. The decision to stop asking questions. Eventually, the investigation slowed. Not because of answers, but because of limits. Without evidence, speculation becomes dangerous. Reports were finalized carefully. Language softened. Uncertainty accepted. The case was closed without closure. Why this story was quietly forgotten? There were no dramatic images. No wreckage. No tragedy for cameras to focus on. Just a plane. Sitting calmly on a runway. Empty. And empty stories do not spread easily. The human need for endings. People want conclusions. They want causes. They want responsibility. This case offered none. It asked a question and refused to answer it, which made it uncomfortable. So it faded from public discussion. But it never truly disappeared. What this case changed? Quietly, procedures were updated. Training scenarios adjusted. Monitoring improved. Not because they understood what happened, but because they feared it might happen again. The sky remembers nothing. The sky does not record events. It does not preserve memory. Planes pass through it, then vanish into distance. Only humans remember. And sometimes, even they cannot explain what they witnessed. The runway after the crowd left. Once the emergency teams departed, the runway returned to its normal state. Lights dimmed. Vehicles moved away. The aircraft remained where it had stopped. From a distance, it looked ordinary. just another plane parked after landing. But those who stood near it later described a strange feeling. Not fear. Not danger. A sense that something was unfinished. The plane had completed its journey. The people inside had not. The aircraft as a closed space. An aircraft is a sealed environment. Controlled air. Controlled pressure. Controlled systems. Everything inside is monitored. Which is why this case unsettled engineers so deeply. Nothing entered. Nothing exited. Yet everyone was gone. It challenged the assumption that closed systems are predictable. That control guarantees safety. That technology sees everything. Silence as data. In most investigations, noise is the problem. Too many signals. Too much information. Here, silence was the evidence. No alarms. No chaos. No interruption. Silence suggested not a failure, but a transition. Something changed quietly enough to leave no trace. The human expectation of disaster. When people think of aviation mysteries, they imagine explosions, falling debris, broken wings, emergency landings. This story offered none of that. It offered something more disturbing. A system that worked perfectly, without the humans it depended on. Why fear never appeared? Psychologists reviewing the case noticed something unusual. There was no emotional escalation. No stress markers. No frantic communication. Whatever occurred did not feel threatening in the moment. And that may be the most unsettling detail of all. Because danger without fear is invisible. The possibility of slow disappearance. Some experts quietly suggested a gradual process. Not an event. A fading. Awareness narrowing. Attention drifting. Consciousness slipping away without resistance. If that happened, no one would have realized they were in danger. No one would have called for help. And no one would have left a trace of urgency behind. The limits of technology. Technology is precise. But it is not perceptive. It measures numbers. It tracks movement. It records data. It does not understand absence. This case exposed that weakness. Everything was recorded. Except what mattered most. Why no final theory survived. Every explanation solved one piece. None solved all. Medical theories explained silence but not disappearance. Technical theories explained flight but not emptiness. Environmental theories explained nothing completely. And so, no theory remained standing. Only questions. The crew as people, not data. Behind the mystery were real individuals. Pilots trained for years. Passengers with plans and destinations. They were not symbols. They were people who boarded a plane expecting to arrive. They did. But only in records. Why this story is rarely told. This story does not fit neatly into categories. It is not a tragedy in the traditional sense. There is no visible loss, no wreckage to mourn. And so it remains quiet, almost forgotten. Like the event itself. The strange comfort of not knowing. There is something oddly calming about unresolved mysteries. They resist explanation. They refuse closure. They remind us that not everything is meant to be understood. And that uncertainty is part of reality. What we learn from silence. Silence teaches patience. It teaches restraint. It reminds us that absence can speak just as clearly as noise. If we listen. The plane as it exists now. The aircraft was eventually dismantled. Studied. Catalogued. Archived. Its parts were absorbed back into systems. But the question it carried never left. A sky that keeps no record. The sky holds no memory. Planes pass through it every day. Most arrive. Some do not. And a few arrive. Empty. This was not a story of disaster. It was a story of disappearance without drama. Of technology without answers. Of a journey completed without anyone to complete it. As you rest now, imagine the steady hum of engines. The calm descent. The gentle touch of wheels on the runway. And a door opening. To nothing. Let the engines power down. Let the lights dim. And let the silence remain. Sleep peacefully.